All right, I'm just going to come out and say it. I hate these prediction videos. I think a lot of them are a big waste of your time. So instead of trying to guess the exact questions you'll see, I'm going to give you 6 question types that will absolutely be showing up on the December SAT. After that, I'll show you a couple of different variations of that question type and how to solve them. And up first, we've got command of evidence. And these textual-based command of evidence questions, regardless of whether they're literary like this one or more scientific, you want to focus on the claim, the hypothesis, whatever it is. In this case, it's saying which illustrates the claim. So first, find my claim. And basically for these ones, it's not going to say the word claim or anything. It's just going to be a statement. So the statement is, this person's portrayal of this person underscores the character's exaggerated sense of his own abilities. That's the focus. From here, we eliminate. And rather than just focus on exaggerated abilities, I want to focus on the exaggerated sense of his own abilities. There should be some sort of self-awareness. I'm not seeing that in choice A. Choice B, though, says, as he fondly flattered himself. So that's that self-awareness, or I guess lack of awareness in this case, if it's an exaggerated sense of his own abilities. And it does go on to say that he thought he had these, gifts, basically. So that totally checks out. Choice C talks about peculiar talents, but again, we don't have that self-recognition. So C is out. And D, again, the author is kind of saying nice things about this person, but there's no self-awareness. So D is out, and our answer is choice B. But what about these hideous things, you're wondering, where we have graphs? These are also considered command of evidence. They're a different kind of command of evidence, but you're going to encounter at least one of them. And the great news is we could kind of treat them the same way. We're going to focus on supporting, in this case, the team's conclusion. And the team's conclusion, we're always going to work backwards because it tends to show up at the end, is going to be that concluded evidence that in the meteorite formed in space and are not the result of contamination on Earth. I'm just going to focus on formed in space, not the result of contamination on Earth. And I'm even going to simplify it, put it in my own words, right? So all formed in space, no Earth. I'll stick that right over here. And you might be wondering, what about the graphic, dude? We're going to ignore the graphic, dude. I would say at least 7 out of 10 times you can completely ignore the graphic and you will not have to look at it to get the correct answer. We're going to just eliminate based off of this. If we have to look at the graphic, then we will. But if we don't, then we'll smile, we'll move on. So choice A, this stuff were detected in both meteorite samples, but not in the soil sample. So if I wasn't quite sure what was going on, I might clarify that the meteorite was in fact, from space, that the soil was from Earth, but I already know that soil's on Earth and meteorites are in space. So that works because we say both meteorite samples, that would be all space, no Earth. Choice A, detected in both of the meteorite samples and in the soil sample. So that says space and Earth, so I don't like that. This stuff detected in both meteorite sample 2 and in the soil. Again, I don't want to include Earth, so C's out. This one detected in this meteorite sample, but not in sample 2. Ooh, this one's tricky because it doesn't mention Earth, but it's comparing one meteorite sample to the other. It needs to mention Earth, but in a negative way, like A does. So we do need it to be included, but we need it to say the right thing. So D is also out, and our answer is choice A. Next up, we've got linear functions, and you will without a doubt be encountering multiple linear functions on your upcoming SAT. In fact, I'm pretty certain at least one of them is going to be a word problem like this one. And I know this is a linear function because it tells me right off the bat, and I'm basically trying to figure out what is my equation. I'm looking for things like slope and y-intercept, but here they're not giving me slope or y-intercept. Instead, they're giving me a couple of points. We've got 20,040 and we've got 15,060. So let's get our equation based off of that. And the easiest thing to do is just grab Desmos and plug your points into a table. So write the word table, a table magically pops up, put in 40 and 20,000. And the other one was 60 and 15,000. Click this button right here. Bada bing, bada boom. We've got a beautiful equation. And again, it was asking me about the demand when the selling price is 55. So basically, what if X equaled 55? Well, Easy way to deal with this is to write my equation down here. I don't think you're actually able to copy and paste, by the way, so just something to look out for. You'll have to take a few more seconds to write this out. And then you can just say with x equals 55. Bingo, it's going to give me 16,250, which is the correct answer. So choice A there. Here's another one, bit different. In fact, I would consider this one of the trickiest types of linear function problems because it looks pretty normal until you look a little bit closer. Basically, we always want to think about y equals mx plus b, where m is our slope and also a constant rate of change, and b is the y-intercept, but in the context of a short word problem like this, some sort of a starting point. So the starting point seems like 270 because that's something that we're paying right up front, right? So I'm already thinking plus 270, and then each day, that's a constant rate of change. So it seems like 135x plus 270 is our equation, and indeed, that is one of the answer choices, answer choice C. But that is wrong. And here's the issue. This is not taking into account that a y-intercept, this 270, is supposed to be when x equals 0. But this is not when x equals 0. This is for the first day. This is when x equals 1. So we basically want to ignore that first day. So here's what we can do. We're going to keep our plus 270, but we're going to change x to x minus 1. The reason we're subtracting 1 is to get rid of that first day that we don't want to count. And then what happens is when we FOIL this out, we get our 135x, that's still our slope, but we're also going to subtract 135. So after combining those guys together, we basically end up with y equals 135x plus 135, because 270 minus 135 is 135. And our real answer is choice D. Next up, we've got transitions, and you will definitely be encountering more than one of these. And what's cool about these is there's really only just one type. It's a transition question. There's no variation on it. So what we want to do is focus on the sentence before the blank space and the sentence that contains the blank space. And we want to create a connection between them. So we have, in a heated debate, the field is divided between this thing and this thing. And then it says, there are those who argue that da 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 da, and those who insist that da 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 da. So again, thinking about what this second sentence is doing in relation to the first sentence, it seems like it is expanding on or clarifying what these two words mean, because I sure as heck don't know what they mean. Even after the explanation, I'm still not super clear on what they are, but that doesn't matter. What matters is the connection. So I'm looking for some sort of a clarifying type of transition. And, you know, maybe I don't have any that I'm thinking of off the top of my head, but if I would have studied the transitions cheat sheet here, I would look for clarifications or rephrasings, and I'd say, oh man, I've got some options here. I've got, in other words, that is, or that is to say. And lo and behold, that is choice D, and that is our correct answer. And yeah, if you want free access to that cheat sheet, go ahead and use the link in the description. Next up, we've got constant questions, and I'm going to say a constant question is anything that involves a constant that annoys you. You are going to come across probably several of these, if I'm being honest. And this is not actually a skill type because it can be spread through a number of algebra-based skills on the SAT, but they're always scary if you don't know how to deal with them. One like this is actually pretty easy to deal with. Again, we're going to tap into Desmos, and we just need to plug in the equation itself. It's going to say, hey, dude, I don't know what C is. And you're like, hey, dude, I don't either. I'm trying to figure that out. So we're going to add a slider. And then the reason that we definitely want to use Desmos on this is that they're giving us choices right here. So we can literally just plug in our answer choices. And remember, we want there to be exactly one solution. So visually, if we're looking at a parabola, which we are, visually this parabola, the vertex should touch the x-axis. That way there's only one solution, because remember, a solution is wherever it touches the x-axis. So if I change C to -68, you're going to see we have no solutions because it's way down here. If we change it to, well, actually that's 1 - 68, sorry. Okay, still. If we change it to -50, oh, bingo. That's our solution right there. So just like that, our answer is choice B. Now, there are some other constants questions that I don't always recommend using Desmos on, at least not to start. Basically, if you ever have a system with no solution or with infinite solutions, I recommend that you start without Desmos because at the very least you can simplify before plugging it into Desmos. There's all sorts of fancy tricks that you can use, and lots of YouTubers like to tell you how to use Desmos on everything. Use it on the English section, who cares? But you know what? We don't have time for all that. Just learn some really basic concepts and you don't have to learn all that crazy stuff. Use it when it's a good choice, not just because you can. Anyway, so the reason I want to not start with Desmos with no solution is because no solution at the end of the day means two things. First, the slope is the same. And second, we don't care about anything that is not a coefficient. So coefficients would be numbers in front of X and Y. So I don't care about this. I don't care about this. I don't care about this. That's cool. Now, if the slope is the same, you have to remember that this basically means the ratio between the coefficients is always going to be the same. So for example, if I had y equals 2x, the same slope would be, y equals 2x. And if it was no solutions, it'd be like, I don't know, +3 or something. So that way we don't have the same y-intercept. But if we were to scale this up, we could also say 2y equals 4x or 4y equals 8x. But you notice that ratio, that's 1:2 ratio is always going to stay the same. So we can always think about that when we're trying to solve these questions. Now to simplify, I want to get everything on one side. And this top equation, I'm already not a fan of these fractions. I'm just going to multiply this whole thing by 4 so I don't have to deal with them. So 3/2y becomes 3 times 4 is 12, 6y minus x. That's why I multiplied by 4 to get rid of that fraction. Equals, again, 3/2y that turned into -6y. And now let's just decide, we'll have y's on the left side and then we'll have x's on the right side. So bringing this down, I'm just going to move my -6y over. So I add 6y, we have 12y equals x. And now I can see that ratio I was talking about. Basically, I want a ratio of 12:1, my y's to my x's, 12:1. Looking at my bottom equation, if we have py equals 1/2 x, well, shoot, dude, if x is turning into 1/2, and then 12 is going to turn into 1/2 of 12, which is 6. And just like that, p equals 6. So I didn't even need to tap into Desmos for that one. Next up, we've got colons. And one of the big skills in the SAT English section is basically punctuation. It's called boundaries. And amongst the punctuation marks that you'll encounter, you're going to see colons. So with colons, we want to think about the rules for colons, which are on my cheat sheet. Again, if you want free access to the cheat sheet bundle, go ahead and use the link in the description. But basically, we want to make sure that we're coming after an independent clause. And then after that independent clause, we can focus on either introducing a list, giving an example, or resolving a cliffhanger. Again, if you want to spend more time with this, just get the free cheat sheet. But let's look at this problem. So this one, we have this group of people examined defense responses for 2 varieties of the sweet potato plant. And then it tells me which 2 varieties they are. That is, I would say, not just a list of 2, but also an example. So it's hitting 2 of my things. And then we just want to make sure that we have a full sentence beforehand. A group of ecologists examined the defensive responses of 2 varieties of the sweet potato plant. Yes, we do. So choice D is definitely going to work here. And in case you're wondering, if you ever see a period and a semicolon and there's no other semicolons in the passage, you could actually eliminate both because those are essentially the same answer. And we do need punctuation, so C is not going to work either. Looking at this one, pause the video, try it on your own first. It looks similar, but it's actually a little bit trickier. Because here we have, for instance, and I'm just going to ignore this first sentence because I don't care about it. I'm also going to ignore this because this is an introduction. A hypothetical basket of goods priced at 100 USD in the United States would have cost 62 US dollars and 110 US dollars in fellow OECD nations, Chile and Luxembourg respectively. It almost seems like the same exact thing where it mentions two fellow nations and then gives us an example of the nation. So choice C, right? Wrong. This one, there's something else going on, because it's not just giving us an example or telling us which two fellow nations, because it doesn't say in these two nations. It actually just says in fellow OECD nations. So this fellow OECD nations is part of the description of Chile and Luxembourg. And specifically, they connect to these numbers. So that's part of the description. We don't want any sort of punctuation there because this is essential information and we don't want to split that up. So basically it's going to be choice D. And if you're having a hard time understanding, I go into way more detail this in other videos and in my English courses, but this is what I refer to as an appositive imposter, where if we said something like, Bob, the president of the world, is coming over. So here we have something called an appositive because we could get rid of this non-essential information. We could just say Bob is coming over. It'd be fine, right? However, if we did something like this, pizza delivery driver Steve is coming over. Now all of a sudden, you're noticing I don't have any punctuation because I could not get rid of Steve, because if I just said pizza delivery driver is coming over, you'd be wondering which pizza delivery driver. And to be clear, we could have switched this around, right? The president of the world, Bob, is coming over because clearly there's only one president of the world, right? But there are many pizza delivery drivers. And similarly, we can infer that there are many OECD nations. All right, finally, and we already saw a couple of these, but we've got word problems, and word problems are spread throughout the math section. And since we haven't gotten to any geometry, let's look at a geometry word problem. So this one, we've basically got a rectangle with 360 square inches of area, and we should know that length times width equals area. So length times width is going to equal 360, right? It says the length and width are both increased by 20. And the mistake that you might make is saying, all right, well, I'm just going to increase 360 by 20%. But that's not exactly what happens, because instead we get length being increased by 20%. That's the same as multiplying by 1.2. And we get width being increased by 20%, which is the same as being multiplied by 1.2. So in fact, what we want to do is take 360 times 1.2 times 1.2, or times 1.2 squared. And that is going to give us our actual answer, which is 518.4. Here we've got a quadratic based word problem, and we know it's quadratic because look at that equation. Y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And I do like starting with the last sentence of a longer word problem to kind of figure out what I'm supposed to focus on. And it says, what is the value of x at the maximum of the graph? Cool. So all I need to do is take this equation, ignore the rest of the word problem, plug this into Desmos, and I should know that anytime I'm being asked about a minimum or a maximum, I'm being asked about the vertex. And of course, with these huge numbers, my vertex is going to be way the heck up here. So I'll have to zoom out a bit. But once I figure out where I'm going, that vertex is going to be 7 and then that number. So my answer, the x value, is 7, just like that. Now, if you're serious about getting your highest possible score on the SAT, go ahead and use the link in the description to join Penguin Test Prep Academy. It's going to give you access to all of my courses, 2 live classes with me a month, and over 1,000 original practice questions you're not going to find on Blue Book or anywhere else.